Hey guys, tonight you find yourself waking before the first bell in a border village where the world is still blue with cold, and the thatch above you breathes out the smell of damp straw, old smoke, and last night's rain. Your boots wait by the door with mud dried on them like a second leather. In the rafters, soot gathers in soft black feathers, and beyond the oak threshold, a horse snorts steam into the winter air while river mist lies low over the fields. Somewhere far off, a monastery bell stirs once, as if even the monks are reluctant to begin. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience, assuming anyone could read them, or afford the mule. You pull your wool blanket closer and feel the stone chill in your bones. A gentle reality check arrives. With the cold, you probably would not last a week out here without someone handing you a bowl, a chore, and very firm instructions. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the village is still half asleep, tell me where you're watching from and what the local time is where you live. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first woman awake is not announced by trumpets, heralds, or any grand stirring of history. She's announced by a soft cough in the dark, a creak in the bed frame, and the careful lifting of a wool cloak from a peg. You lie still for a moment on the packed straw mattress, listening as she moves through the cottage with the quiet certainty of someone whose day has begun long before the sun gives permission. Her name is Aveline, though half the village calls her simply Goodwife, and the other half calls her when something has gone wrong. She bends near the hearth, where last night's embers hide beneath a grey blanket of ash. Her fingers, red from cold, take up the iron poker and nudge the buried glow until a thin orange eye opens in the darkness. A scrap of dry reed, saved carefully under the bench, catches with the shy hiss. Smoke rises, folds under the low roof, and finds all the places smoke enjoys, which is to say everywhere except the hole intended for it. You blink, and your eyes water. And Aveline does not seem impressed by your suffering. She has been breathing this house since girlhood. Outside, another door opens, then another. The border village wakes in pieces, a latch lifted, a hen protesting, a bucket knocked by a careless foot, a dog deciding that dawn is a personal insult. No one can quite agree whether the dog belongs to the miller, the reeve, or no one at all, but it belongs very confidently to the road, and it has already chosen to follow you some day. For now, it noses the frost along the lane and sneezes. You rise because there is no graceful way to remain useless. The floor is hard earth near the hearth and rough boards closer to the sleeping place. In richer houses, you have heard, there are rushes strewn over stone floors, sweetened with herbs when visitors are expected and neglected when they are not. Here, the rushes are scarce, and the clean ones are saved for feast days, weddings, and those rare moments when someone important might step inside and pretend not to notice the pig smell. Aveline's eldest daughter, Merowen, is already wrapping her hair beneath a linen coif. She cannot be more than 17, though her hands look older, shaped by kneading, washing, hauling, lifting, plucking, scouring, and all the little verbs that keep a household from collapsing into mud. She tucks a small blue bead into the fold of her sleeve. Some swear that a blue bead can turn aside the envious eye, especially when butter refuses to come, hens stop laying, or a neighbour praises your child too warmly. Even now, it is hard to tell whether people truly believe such charms, or simply feel better having one more thing to blame besides weather, hunger, and husbands. Near the wall, Aveline's mother sits upright beneath a fur-lined cloak gone bald at the edges. She's awake too, though she has not yet moved. She watches the hearth catch, and the light touches her face slowly, finding every crease like roads on a winter map. She murmurs a prayer to St. Bridget for the fire, then another to St. Anne for the women of the house, then something older and quieter that she does not explain. The words are too soft for you to catch, and perhaps that is the point. This is a pioneer village in the medieval sense, not brave families in clean bonnets crossing painted plains, but tired households pressing life into a damp borderland where forest still crowds the fields. Wolves take interest in sheep, and the Lord's men ride through often enough to remind everyone who owns the soil. The village lies beyond the older towns, close to a river ford and a strip of disputed woodland where charcoal burners, hunters, and less honest travellers all claim to be exactly where they should be. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the land was granted by charter, seized from scrub, blessed by monks, or simply occupied by people too stubborn to leave. Aveline's work begins before work has a name. She counts bodies first, not in a grim way, only in the practical manner of the poor husband breathing near the wall. Children bundled two to a blanket, mother alive by the hearth, baby warm enough, door barred, roof not leaking in the corner worse than yesterday. Then she listens. A loose animal sounds different from a settled one. A hungry cow shifts with complaint. A fox near the hens creates a silence sharper than noise. Somewhere behind the cottage, the goat gives one offended bleat, suggesting that existence continues but not to her satisfaction. You follow Aveline to the door. The iron key hangs from her girdle, heavy and dark, less a symbol of power than a reminder that everything worth keeping is fragile. She lifts the bar, opens the oak door, and cold steps in like an unwelcome relative. The lane outside is silvered with frost. Low cottages lean toward one another beneath thatch stitched with hazel rods. Thin smoke climbs from smoke holes and roof seams, drifting into the dawn. Beyond the houses, fields lie under a pale crust, each ridge waiting for the year's labour as if sleeping with one eye open. A bell sounds again from the monastery hill, a patient bronze note rolling over bare branches. It marks the hour for prayer, but here it also marks the hour for stirring, feeding, sweeping, milking, checking, mending, and remembering what was forgotten the night before. Time is not kept by little clocks on shelves. Time comes from bells, light, hunger, animals, and the terrifying knowledge that if you delay one task, it will invite 6 friends. Across the lane, another woman shoulders open her door with a bundle of sticks in her arms. She nods to Aveline. No one speaks loudly yet. Dawn words are kept small, perhaps because the day is still thin and might tear. A boy carries a wooden yoke too large for him. A girl chases a hen away from the threshold with the weary authority of a bailiff at Manor Court. The hen escapes judgment immediately. You stand there, wrapped in borrowed wool, learning that the women of this place do not begin the day with one grand duty, but with 100 small negotiations against cold, damp, hunger, dirt, animals, children, fire, and time. Aveline checks the sky. Not because the sky will answer honestly, but because looking is free. Red at morning, some say, warns sailors and shepherds alike. A ring around the moon means weather is turning. A crow calling from the churchyard roof may mean rain, death. Visitors, or simply a crow with opinions. The horizon pales. Frost glimmers on the wattle fences. Somewhere a cartwheel, already cracked and badly mended, leans beside a shed like a prophecy waiting for a pothole. You notice it because Aveline notices it, and because her eyes catch everything that might become work. She sees the sagging hinge, the low stack of firewood, the missing peg, the goat's rope, the child's cough, the thinness of the flour sack, the smoke that refuses to rise properly. The day is not yet bright, and already it has filled both her hands. Still, there is warmth, not comfort exactly, but warmth of a kind that belongs to shared hardship. Everyone brings the baby closer to the fire. Aveline's mother pats the bench beside her. The nameless dog trots up to the doorway and sits as if invited. The first flame strengthens, and its light reaches the cottage walls, touching the hanging herbs, the wooden bowls, the coarse bread wrapped in cloth, the patched cloak drying near the smoke. You breathe in wet wool, ash, hay, and the faint sour promise of yesterday's ale. Aveline looks once toward the fields, once toward the hearth, and then back to the small waking room where the whole world seems gathered in rough wool and smoke. She does not call it labor. She does not call it history. She simply reaches for the first bucket, and the morning, with all its quiet weight, begins. Aveline passes you the smaller bucket, which is kind in the same way a winter wind is kind when it chooses only one cheek. The larger bucket is already in her hand, its wooden hoops dark with old damp, its handle polished by years of palms. Merowyn takes the yoke across her shoulders, and together you step into the lane, where the mud has frozen just enough to pretend it is solid. It gives way beneath your heel with a soft crack, and cold wetness finds the seam of your boot at once. Like a tax collector with excellent instincts. The well stands near the middle of the village, beneath a crooked roof of split boards. A little stone cross has been set beside it, not tall, not grand, but worn smooth at the edges by hands touching it in passing. Some swear that a well must be greeted before dawn, especially on days when the water lies black and still, because hidden things listen under the earth. No one can quite agree whether this is Christian caution, old field magic dressed in a saint's cloak, or simply something grandmothers say to make sleepy girls behave. Aveline touches 2 fingers to the cross anyway, and Merowyn does the same. The rope is stiff with frost. It creaks over the wooden roller as the bucket drops, striking the water below with a hollow slap that echoes up the shaft. You lean close and smell stone, moss, iron, and deep cold. When the bucket rises again, it comes heavy and dark, water trembling over the rim in silver shivers. Aveline wastes none of it. She pours into your pail, then hers, then into a smaller jug for the old mother who prefers water drawn before sunrise. Because she says it sits kinder in the stomach. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether dawn water is truly better, but no one argues with an old woman who has survived 9 famines, 2 fevers, and 1 husband with a singing voice. Other women gather at the well. Their skirts are lifted slightly from the muck, their cloaks pinned with bone or brass, their breath rising pale around their faces. They speak softly at first, then with the slow warmth of people whose tongues wake after their hands. One has a child feverish at home. Another says the miller's measure is growing meaner each month. A third has heard that traders on the southern road carry saltfish, blue cloth, and possibly trouble. News travels by feet, buckets, church doors, and market stalls, and the well hears nearly all of it before the priest does. You lift your bucket and learn, very quickly, that water is not a gentle thing. It pulls your shoulder downward, bumps your knee, and sloshes cold over your hand. Aveline walks steadily, as though the weight has become part of her bones. Back at the cottage, she sets her bucket near the hearth and covers it with a cleanish cloth to keep out ash, flies, and the curiosity of children. The youngest child, already awake and round-eyed, reaches toward it. Merowyn moves the child aside with one hip. Never pausing in her work, this is how women here seem to move not from task to task, but through several at once, like a river dividing around stones. The hearth has strengthened while you were gone. Aveline crouches before it and begins the careful art of ash. She rakes grey powder away from the embers, not too quickly, not too deeply, because a buried coal is a treasure, and a dead hearth is a household scolded by the universe. Ash is not merely waste. It cleans pots, sweetens certain messes, keeps banked embers through the night, and, mixed with fat, can become harsh soap that bites the skin but leaves linen a little less shameful. In one corner, a lye barrel waits beneath a ragged cover. It looks unimportant, which is usually how the most useful things avoid being stolen. Aveline lifts a flat stone, revealing a heel of yesterday's coarse bread wrapped in cloth. She tests it with her thumb. It is hard enough to defend a doorway, but not beyond saving. Merowyn pours a little water into a wooden bowl and breaks the bread into it, letting it soften while the fire grows. For fresh bread, there is dough to wake. A linen-covered trough sits near the warmest wall, and when Aveline folds back the cloth, the dough beneath has risen in a slow, sleepy swell. It smells sour. Earthy, alive. You watch her hands press into it. They do not hurry. Her fingers push, fold, turn, and press again, making a rhythm almost like prayer. Flour dust clings to her knuckles. The table is nothing more than a thick board set on trestles, scarred by knives and blackened near one edge. A carved mark crosses the underside, a little protective sign put there by her mother years ago. Some say such marks keep household spirits from souring the dough. Others say they keep mice away, even now. It is hard to tell whether either spirits or mice have ever respected carpentry. Merowan sprinkles a pinch of salt so carefully that you understand how dear it is. Salt is not just flavour, it is preservation, trade, sweat, tolls, and miles. It keeps meat from rot, fish from ruin, and some claim it keeps ill luck from sitting too long in corners. Aveline notices you watching and gives the smallest smile, the kind that appears and disappears before it can be taxed. The bread for this morning is not the white loaf of noble tables, soft as a bishop's sleeve and about as available to you. This is maslin bread, made from mixed grains, darker and rougher, sometimes stretched with peas or beans when stores run thin. The oven outside belongs to several households, and firing it properly takes fuel, planning, and negotiation. Today, Aveline shapes small flat loaves to bake near the hearth on a heated stone, because the village oven will not be lit until later. And hunger does not wait for community arrangements. The cottage grows brighter by degrees. Not bright, exactly, but less dark. Smoke curls along the rafters, where strips of drying herbs hang beside a small bunch of feathers tied with red thread. You ask nothing about the feathers. Aveline's mother sees you looking and says they are for keeping lightning from the roof, or nightmares from the cradle, depending on whom you ask. No one can quite agree whether the charm works better before Candlemas or after. Though everyone agrees it should not be thrown away casually, throwing away a charm is how you invite a story you do not want to be in. The children receive softened bread in wooden bowls with thin ale warmed beside the fire. Ale is safer than much water after it has sat, and small ale is weak enough for children, workers, and anyone expected to remain upright. You taste a sip and find it sour, smoky, and strangely comforting. Aveline's husband, still lacing his boots near the wall, eats quickly, but the women eat while moving, tearing small pieces, setting them down, forgetting them, finding them again, and sharing crusts with the child who insists he is starving despite having just eaten. Then comes sweeping. Merowan takes up a birch broom and draws last night's crumbs, ash, straw bits, and tracked mud toward the door. In a great hall, servants would turn and freshen rushes, perhaps scattering lavender, meadowsweet, or rosemary if the household wished to smell like money. Here, the floor is scraped and swept because dirt invites damp. Damp invites rot, and rot has the manners of a lord once settled. It is difficult to remove. The nameless dog appears at the threshold and tries to assist by stepping directly into the pile. Merowan sighs without surprise. The dog accepts this as praise. You carry the dirty scraps outside to the midden where broken pottery, bones, ash, peelings, and household secrets slowly become part of the earth. The air has sharpened. Dawn is no longer a rumour but a pale wash over the lane. A rooster calls from somewhere behind the byre, late and self-important, as if he personally invented morning after everyone else had done the work. Back inside, Aveline sets the first flat loaf near the heat. The dough darkens, blisters, and releases a smell so warm and plain that for a moment the whole cottage seems to soften around it. Water stands covered, ash lies banked, bread begins. The women's morning has already carried well rope, cold iron, smoke, flour, salt, gossip, belief, hunger, and the first small victory of flame. You warm your hands above the hearth and understand, quietly, that the day has barely opened its eyes. When the first flat loaf has cooled enough to tear without burning your fingers, Aveline gives you a piece and points with her chin toward the back of the cottage. This is not an invitation to admire the morning. It is, as you are beginning to understand, the local way of saying there is more work waiting, and it has been waiting longer than you have. You follow her through the low rear door, ducking beneath a beam blackened by years of smoke and heads that forgot to duck. The kitchen garden lies behind a wattle fence, its woven hazel rods silvered with frost and patched in 2 places with old basket strips. Beyond it, the village fields stretch toward the dark line of woodland. But this smaller plot feels more intimate, more guarded, almost like another room of the house, only roofed by grey sky and visited by every bird with criminal intentions. Aveline pauses at the gate and looks over the beds. Nothing here appears grand. There are cabbages hunched low against the cold, onions tucked in rows, leeks standing like tired green soldiers, beans on poles from the warmer months, and herb clumps pressed close to the wall where the cottage gives off a little sheltering heat. Yet this patch is not decoration. It is broth, medicine, flavour, trade, and a thin argument against hunger. A noble garden may have clipped hedges, fountains, and ladies walking slowly enough to be painted. This garden has mud, goose droppings, and a cabbage that looks personally offended by winter. Merowan joins you with a basket and a small iron knife. She kneels beside the herbs first, brushing away straw laid down to keep the roots from freezing. Sage, rue, parsley, thyme, and a little winter savoury cling stubbornly to life. Near the fence, a rosemary bush has been wrapped with sacking like an elderly aunt in a draughty hall. Some swear rosemary remembers every kind word spoken near it, and that it grows poorly in a house where affection has gone sour. No one can quite agree whether this is plant wisdom, marriage advice, or simply a way to shame people into watering the herbs. Aveline cuts only what she needs. Waste here is not merely frowned upon, it is almost a moral failure, the kind that old women remember aloud at inconvenient times. A few sage leaves go into the basket for the pottage. A sprig of thyme is set aside for the child with the cough. Rue is handled more carefully, for it is useful, bitter, and not to be trusted in large amounts. Near the back wall, dried bundles hang beneath a little lean-to nettle, yarrow, mugwort, and tansy. Tied with thread and marked by memory rather than writing. Ink-stained scribes in monasteries may preserve wisdom on vellum, but Aveline keeps much of hers in knots, smells, and the exact place where things are hung. The old mother comes slowly to the doorway, wrapped in her thinning, fur-lined cloak, and tells Merowan to check beneath the cabbage leaves for slugs. She says slugs found before sunrise mean wet weather, unless they mean a mild thaw, unless they mean nothing at all because slugs are small beasts with private business. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. Still, Merowan checks. You check too, because you have been handed a leaf and a look. Under one broad cabbage leaf, you find 2 pale slugs pressed together like monks avoiding labour. Merowan flicks them into a wooden cup. They will not be wasted either. Someone says crushed slug can be used in a remedy for certain swellings, though no one seems eager to discuss the texture. Medieval medicine, you are discovering, often begins with an herb and ends with a question you wish you had not asked. Aveline moves along the onion bed, pressing the soil back where frost has lifted it. Her hands are quick, but gentle. The ground is dark, damp, and cold enough to sting your fingers. She shows you how to loosen weeds without disturbing the roots you need. In summer, this place would be crowded with bees and flies, the smell of warm leaves, the sticky green scent of growth. Now it is quieter, but not sleeping. The garden waits under straw, under mud, under prayer, holding what it can until light and warmth return. At the far corner stands a small rowan branch thrust into the fence. Red berries cling to it, shriveled by frost. A scrap of wool has been tied around the twig. Some say rowan keeps witches from souring milk or blighting cabbages. Others say it keeps wandering spirits from slipping through gaps in the fence. Even now, it is hard to tell whether anyone in the village truly fears witches more than hungry deer. But the rowan remains, and the fence is checked for holes with equal seriousness. You hear the monastery bell again, fainter now, marking another office on the hill. Its bronze note travels through the bare trees and settles over the village like a slow breath. Aveline straightens and reads the sky. Clouds lie low in the west, with a yellow seam beneath them. She studies the smoke from the cottage roof, the dampness on the fence, the way the crows move beyond the lane. Weather here is not conversation filler. It decides bread, fuel, travel, sickness, and whether a woman must spend half the day rescuing wet laundry from a line while pretending not to curse. Merywyn digs near the wall and lifts a small clutch of carrots, twisted and forked, nothing like the proud market bundles shown at feast tables. She rubs the dirt away with her thumb. One has split from frost, but most are sound. Aveline nods. These go into the basket too. A few parsnips remain buried, sweeter after cold, saved for a later day when the pot needs comfort and there is little else to give it. Near the herb patch, you notice a shallow bowl turned upside down over a dark patch of soil. Aveline lifts it and reveals a few tender leaves hidden beneath. She has shielded them from frost with broken pottery and patience. This, more than any castle tower or knightly oath, feels like strategy. The frontier is not conquered only by axes and charters. It is conquered by women crouching in the mud before breakfast, persuading green things to live. The dog appears at the fence, nose first, then paws, then the full uninvited creature. It watches the basket with interest, as if considering a future in vegetable inspection. Merywyn tells it to go away. The dog sits. This, apparently, is a negotiation neither side intends to win. Aveline sends you to gather dry pea sticks from a stack beside the shed. They are brittle and grey, saved for kindling and for marking rows when spring planting comes. Beside them sits the cracked cart wheel you noticed earlier, leaning as though tired of being round. Aveline glances at it, then away, the way one looks at a debt. The road to market will not be kind to that wheel, but that worry belongs to later hours. For now, there are roots to clean and herbs to tie. Before returning inside, the old mother sprinkles a pinch of ash along the threshold of the garden gate. You ask with your eyes, and she answers that ash keeps crawling pests away, or ill luck, or neighbours who borrow too much and return too little. No one can quite agree whether it works on any of them. Still, the pale line rests across the mud, delicate as a boundary drawn between hunger and hope. You carry the basket back toward the cottage. Its weight is modest, but its meaning is not. Sage, thyme, onions, carrots, cabbage leaves, and muddy roots knock softly against one another as you walk. The hearth smoke reaches you before the door does. Inside, the low fire waits, the water waits, the softened bread waits, and the long day opens a little wider. Behind you, the garden settles again beneath frost and straw, small, stubborn, and quietly alive. Inside the cottage, the basket of roots is set near the hearth, but Aveline does not at once begin cutting them. The fire has its own slow intentions, and the pot can wait a little while longer. For now, the room turns toward cloth, because cloth is never finished. It frays while you sleep, stains while you eat, tears while you work, shrinks in rain, stiffens in frost, and somehow vanishes into children as if children are small walking laundries with opinions. Merywyn drags a low stool nearer the light. Not sunlight, exactly. For the window is only a small opening covered with oiled linen, but a thin grey brightness seeps through it, enough to see thread against wool. Aveline takes up a spindle and distaff, settling the distaff under one arm with the ease of long practice. The wool has been washed, teased, and carded, though never as clean as anyone hopes. It carries a faint sheep smell beneath the smoke, a warm, grassy ghost of the animal it once belonged to. You sit opposite them, hands near the hearth, watching Aveline draw fibres from the bundle and twist them into thread. The spindle drops, turns, and hangs, spinning like a little charm against the dim room. Her fingers move constantly, pulling, smoothing, feeding the twist. This, you realise, is not a task done in spare time. It is the thing that fills the cracks between all other tasks, the work that waits in the lap while soup boils, while children sleep, while neighbours talk. While rain traps everyone indoors, a woman may be resting, but if there is a spindle in her hand, rest has been cleverly disguised. Merwin mends a sleeve by the door. The garment is coarse brown wool, patched already in 3 shades of brown, none of them agreeing with the others. She turns it inside out and studies the tier as if reading a difficult legal document. A noble woman's gown may be cut to show rank, wealth, and the good fortune of not crawling under fences after hens. Here, clothing announces survival. Every patch is a small treaty between cold and poverty. Aveline's mother reaches for a linen shift folded beside her. It has worn thin near the shoulder. She threads a needle with such narrow-eyed patience that even the dog pauses to respect the ritual, or perhaps to see whether thread is food. The needle is iron, precious enough to be kept in a little case of bone. Losing it would cause a search more serious than some village court hearings. Some swear that dropping a needle point first means a visitor is coming, while losing one entirely means a quarrel has already entered the house and is merely waiting to be noticed. No one can quite agree whether the needle brings the quarrel or simply reports it. You're handed a lump of wool and shown how to tease it apart. Your fingers are clumsy. You pull too much, then too little. Merwin watches with the gentle pity usually reserved for lambs born in bad weather. The wool catches on every rough place of your skin. Soon your hands smell faintly of lanolin, smoke, and yesterday's ash, which is not an official perfume but would probably sell well in a monastery gift stall if monks were less honest about suffering. Aveline speaks while she spins, her voice low enough to mingle with the crackle of the fire. She tells you that wool is the village's quiet coin. Fleeces become yarn, yarn becomes cloth, cloth becomes shirts, blankets, hose, caps, wrappings, and sometimes payment. Linen comes from flax, more troublesome in its way, needing pulling, retting, drying, breaking, scutching, heckling, and all manner of words that sound like punishments because they nearly are. The men boast of ploughing. And fair enough, for ploughing is hard, but flax, Aveline says, can make a saint mutter into her sleeve. Near the wall hangs a bundle of flax fibres, pale and combed smooth, waiting to be spun into linen thread. Linen is cooler, cleaner, kinder against skin when it is new, though it wrinkles if you look at it sternly. Wool warms even when damp, which matters in a land where damp behaves less like weather and more like a permanent resident. Between wool and linen lies much of a woman's day, though few songs praise the person who keeps everyone from freezing politely. The old mother shows you a charm sewn into the hem of a child's tunic, a tiny knot of red thread and a crumb of wax from a Candlemas blessing, tucked between folds. Some say blessed wax guards against fever, others say red thread distracts harmful spirits, who apparently have the attention span of geese. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the charm comforts the child, the mother, or the grandmother who refuses to let the world go unguarded. Aveline takes up a wooden tablet woven with narrow bands, showing how straps and ties are made. Her fingers lift and turn the tablets, shifting the threads into a pattern that appears from nothing more than patience. The band may become a belt, a tie for a bundle, a strap for a bag, or edging for a garment if someone feels ambitious. Nothing here is only one thing. A broken linen sheet becomes swaddling, then bandages, then cleaning rags, then stuffing, then tinder. A ruined sleeve becomes patches, old wool becomes padding, even the smallest scraps are saved, because winter has a talent for remembering what people threw away in summer. Merwin lays the mended sleeve across her knee and bites off the thread. Aveline frowns without looking up, and Merwin hides a smile. Teeth are tools when tools are few, though every grandmother insists this is how girls ruin their mouths before marriage. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether ruined teeth or ruined patience come first. The room settles into a rhythm, spindle turning, needle passing, thread pulling through cloth, fire breathing, child murmuring, dog scratching, rain beginning faintly on the thatch. though the sky promised nothing a moment ago. The earlier slugs, it seems, may have known something after all. A drop finds its way through the roof near the far beam and lands in a wooden cup placed there for that exact betrayal. Aveline does not glance at it. The cup has its office, as surely as the monastery bell has its own. You begin to see the hidden economy moving through their hands. There are no ledgers open, no coins stacked, no clerk scratching numbers with a goose quill. Yet each twist of wool, each patch, each saved thread holds value. A warm cloak means fewer fevers. A mended stocking means a child can cross frost without tears. A clean linen strip means a wound may be bound. A blanket means an old woman sleeps through the night instead of coughing until dawn. These are quiet riches, easily overlooked by anyone measuring wealth only in silver, land, and horses. Aveline pauses to rub warmth into her fingers. They are reddened at the knuckles, cracked at the sides, and strong in the way roots are strong. She takes the half-burned candle stub from a shelf and checks its wick. It will be saved for evening mending. When the light fails before the work does, beeswax candles burn cleaner and sweeter, but tallow is cheaper, smoky, and inclined to smell like an animal still making a complaint. The beeswax is kept for holy days, childbirth, sickness, and moments when the household wishes to feel slightly less mortal. Outside, the rain thickens, the garden fades behind the oiled linen window. Inside, wool gathers into thread, thread disappears into cloth, and cloth returns to the bodies that will wear it through mud, market, field, and sleep. You hold your clumsy strand of wool, uneven as a bad road, and Aveline nods as if it may yet become useful. In this house, usefulness is a kind of blessing. The fire glows low, the spindle turns again, and the long day continues through cold fingers and patient thread. The thread is wound, the sleeve is mended badly enough to survive another week, and the rain on the thatch settles into a steady whisper. Aveline places the spindle aside as if dismissing a small servant, then turns toward the hearth with the calm of someone approaching a negotiation. The low fire is ready now, red at the heart and pale at the edges, and above it waits the iron pot, blackened by more meals than anyone in the house can count. You help Merowyn bring the garden basket closer. The roots are still clotted with earth, the cabbages curled tight, the onions sharp enough to sting your eyes before the knife has even touched them. Aveline sits on the low stool and begins trimming with the small blade, cutting away bruises, saving the sound pieces, dropping peelings into one bowl and usable scraps into another. Nothing falls without being considered. The outer cabbage leaves, too tough for the family, may go to the goat. Onion skins may colour cloth if enough are saved. Bones, crusts, stale bits, and yesterday's crumbs all have futures, which is more than can be said for some nights. The pottage begins with water from the covered bucket, poured carefully into the pot. A handful of dried beans follows, already soaked since last evening in a wooden bowl near the hearth. Beans are humble things, but they have the stubborn dignity of food that keeps people alive when more glamorous dishes have failed to appear. Aveline adds chopped onion, leek, and the twisted carrots from the garden. The knife knocks softly against the board. Steam gathers on her face. The cottage fills with the slow green smell of roots meeting heat. Near the beam hangs a strip of smoked pork no larger than your hand. Aveline cuts from it sparingly, shaving off small pieces that fall into the pot like treasure. The smoke scent deepens at once, dark and comforting, and the children look up from the corner as if called by bells sweeter than the monasteries. Meat here is not an everyday mountain on a trencher. It is a memory, a seasoning, a little proof that someone once managed to preserve part of a pig before hunger, weather, or neighbours claimed it. Merowyn breaks hard bread into pieces and sets them aside to thicken the broth later. Some of yesterday's softened loaf is stirred in too, because pottage welcomes nearly anything except pride. Aveline adds sage, thyme, and a pinch of salt so small it seems almost symbolic, though everyone watches it with respect. Salt has travelled farther than most villagers ever will. It has crossed roads, toll gates, pack saddles, warehouses, and arguments. only to vanish into a pot while a dog sighs by the door as if history has disappointed him personally. The old mother leans close and tosses in 3 grains of coarse meal with a muttered blessing. You glance at her, and she lifts one eyebrow, daring curiosity to become foolish. Some swear the first stir of a pot must move sunwise, to keep the household from turning sour. Others say a woman should never stir with a knife, unless she wants sharp words before sunset. No one can quite agree whether the spoon protects the meal or the marriage. But Aveline uses the wooden spoon all the same and turns it slowly to the right. Rain taps harder overhead, a drop falls into the cup beneath the leak, then another. The little sound keeps time with the bubbling pot. Beyond the cottage wall, you hear the goat complain, the hen scratch, and somewhere down the lane the nameless dog's rival bark once, as if announcing a legal dispute of no importance. Inside, the air grows warmer. Damp wool begins to steam. Smoke sits under the rafters. Your eyes sting, then settle. Medieval kitchens, you are learning, are not separate rooms of shining copper and obedient flames. They are corners of life where cooking, heating, drying, nursing, mending, scolding, praying, and coughing all happen in the same smoky breath. Aveline shows you how the pot must be watched without fussing over it. Too fierce a flame burns the bottom. Too weak a flame leaves beans hard enough to discourage joy. She feeds the fire with pea sticks from the garden stack and a few splinters saved from broken hurdles. Good wood is never wasted on impatience. The larger logs are kept for evening, sickness, or weather that grows mean after dark. Fuel is another kind of food, and the forest does not hand it over kindly. Merrin kneads a little extra meal with water into rough dumplings, no bigger than walnuts, and drops them into the simmer. They sink first, then rise slowly, pale and lumpy, like small thoughts changing their minds. The youngest child asks whether there will be honey. No one answers at once, which is answer enough. Honey belongs to feast days, medicines, and rare moments when the bees have been more generous than the Lord. The child sighs with theatrical sorrow. Aveline tells him he may lick the spoon if he stops looking bereaved. This seems to restore his faith in creation. On a shelf above the hearth sits a small clay pot sealed with cloth. Inside is a mixture of honey, vinegar, and herbs kept for coughs. Nearby hangs a string of garlic, a charm against sickness, worms, bad air, and visitors who stand too close. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the garlic is medicine, magic, or simply a strong suggestion that everyone keep breathing at a respectful distance. The old mother insists it works best if hung before the first winter frost. Merowyn says it works best if actually eaten. Aveline says both of them may be right, which is how peace survives another morning. The pottage thickens. You take the spoon when Aveline gestures us and you stir carefully, feeling the drag of beans, roots, bread, and meal against the bottom. The warmth rises into your wrist. This pot is not merely lunch. It is a household calendar. In spring it may hold nettles and young greens. In summer, peas, onions, herbs, and whatever the garden can spare. In autumn, beans, barley, and roots. In winter, it becomes darker, thicker, more patient, built from what has been dried, smoked, salted, buried, or remembered in time. Aveline tastes from the spoon, blows once, and nods. Merowyn sets out wooden bowls and old trenchers, stale bread rounds that serve as plates for those lucky enough to have them. The children drift nearer, pulled by steam. The husband returns briefly from the byre with straw on his sleeve and mud on his boots, receives a bowl, and eats standing, because the morning has no patience for ceremony. The old mother gets hers first, with softer bread and fewer beans because her teeth have formed opinions. The dog receives nothing yet, but remains hopeful with the dignity of a pilgrim before a shrine. You sit near the hearth with your bowl cupped in both hands. The pottage is plain, smoky, thick, a little bitter from the greens and sweet where carrot has softened. It tastes of work more than flavour, but after the cold garden and the well rope and the damp wool, it feels almost luxurious. Aveline eats slowly, though her eyes continue to count everything: children, fire, bucket, bread, Rain, wood, the leak, the hanging pork, the half-burned candle stub waiting for evening. Outside, the bell from the monastery rolls again through the wet air. The day has moved forward, though the sky remains grey and low. The pot stays over the embers, because pottage is never truly finished. It is eaten from, added to, stretched, warmed again, and trusted to carry the household until the next hunger. You lower your spoon, listening to the rain, the fire, the small scrape of bowls, and the soft breathing of people who know that survival often sounds exactly like something simmering slowly in the dark. The bowls are scraped clean, the pot is set back from the fiercest heat, and the rain softens just enough for Evelyn to look toward the door with the expression of someone who has been given a narrow bargain by the sky. Market day will not wait because the road is wet. Eggs will not sell themselves. Wool will not walk to town, though after watching it cling to every sleeve and skirt in the cottage, you suspect it might try. Merowyn wraps the eggs in straw inside a shallow basket, each one tucked as carefully as a saint's finger bone in a reliquary, and perhaps more useful. Aveline ties a bundle of spun wool with a narrow tablet-woven band, then adds a cloth packet of dried herbs, sage, yarrow, thyme, and a little tansy for those who believe bitterness proves strength. There are 2 small cheeses wrapped in linen, a handful of onions, and a twist of thread dyed a muddy yellow with onion skins. None of it looks like wealth, yet all of it must pass through rain, mud, tolls, bargaining hands, and the watchful eyes of people trained by hunger to notice everything. The cracked cartwheel waits by the shed, still leaning with that patient look of future inconvenience. Aveline studies it, then chooses not to trust it. Instead, the load is divided by back, arm, and shoulder. You receive a bundle light enough to be merciful and awkward enough to be comic. Merowyn takes the egg basket. Aveline takes the wool and cheeses beneath her cloak. The dog appears before anyone calls it, wearing the satisfied face of a creature who has appointed himself escort, witness, and possibly inspector of cheese. The lane beyond the cottage is slick, churned by hooves and clogs. You pass low roofs, fenced gardens, wood piles covered with old reed mats, and a byre where a cow watches the procession with deep suspicion. Other women join from nearby doors, carrying hens tied by the legs, bundles of flax, a pot sealed with cloth, a sack of beans, and gossip already warming under their tongues. One woman has a pilgrim badge pinned to her cloak, a little pewter shell bought years ago from a shrine road. Some swear such badges protect travellers from thieves, storms, and bad ale. No one can quite agree whether the badge guards the woman, or merely warns thieves she has already spent her spare coin on holiness. The village track bends past the little roadside shrine, where a painted wooden saint stands beneath a roof of warped boards. His face has faded until he seems less holy than mildly surprised. Aveline touches the shrine post as she passes. Merowyn does too, though quickly, as if the saint knows she is in a hurry. Someone has left a crust of bread there, hardened by damp air. It may be an offering, or bait for birds, or both. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether saints mind sharing with sparrows. The fields stretch on either side, ridged and heavy, their furrows holding rainwater in dull silver lines. Beyond them, the forest presses close, dark even in morning. You see cut stumps, new fences, and patches of land recently wrestled from bramble and root. This is where pioneer women truly live, not at the edge of a painted sunset, but at the edge of work that grows back if neglected. A field must be cleared, then drained, then watched, then seeded, then weeded, then guarded, then harvested, then worried over all winter. It is less conquest than a long argument with mud. The road rises toward the walled town. Though road is a generous word, it is a sequence of puddles with ambitions. Your boots sink and pull free with noises that would embarrass a polite household. Merowyn balances the eggs as though walking with a sleeping child. Aveline keeps one eye on the sky, another on the bundle, and some secret third eye, common to experienced women, on everyone else's business. At a bend in the track, A man with a pack mule has stopped to adjust a strap. He nods and asks whether the ford is passable. One of the older women says it was passable yesterday, which in river language means almost nothing today, even now. It is hard to tell whether advice on roads is ever meant as guidance or simply as a way of making uncertainty sound neighbourly. The mule sneezes, the dog sneezes back. This seems to settle matters between them. You pass a willow where strips of cloth hang from the branches, faded by rain and sun. Aveline tells you people tie rags there for sore joints, fevers, bad dreams, and children who will not sleep. The illness is meant to pass into the cloth and leave with the wind. Some swear it works best if you do not look back after tying the knot. Merowyn says it works best if the child is finally tired. Aveline says both may be true, which is becoming her preferred method of keeping the world from arguing itself into pieces. By mid-morning the town wall appears ahead, grey above the mist, with a gatehouse crouched over the road. Smoke rises from within the walls, carrying smells stronger and more crowded than the village baking bread. Wet horses, tanners' vats, fish, dung, hot metal, and too many people living close enough to know one another's faults. The gate itself is oak, iron-strapped, and dark from weather. A guard stands beneath the arch with a cloak drawn up around his ears, looking as though he regrets every career choice that led to Dampstone before noon. Before the gate, travellers gather in a slow knot a cart of firewood, 2 monks with mud-spattered hems, a woman driving geese, a peddler with pins and ribbons, a boy carrying eels in a covered pot, and a merchant whose hat looks too fine for the weather, and therefore suspicious. The geese hiss at the dog. The dog pretends not to be offended, which fools no one. Market tolls are collected at the gate, not always evenly, not always kindly. Aveline has counted her goods before leaving and counts them again now, lips moving slightly. Eggs, wool, cheese, onions, herbs. The Reeves clerk sits under a little shelter with a wax tablet, making marks with a stylus while trying to keep rain off his sleeves. He charges for entry, for stalls, for certain measures, for certain animals, and possibly for breathing if one does it with commercial intent. Medieval towns. You are learning, adore trade almost as much as they adore finding reasons to tax it. Aveline gives over the required coin with a calm face and unhappy fingers. Merowyn watches the egg basket as though guarding royal treasure. The clerk peers into the bundles, pokes the wool, sniffs the cheese, and waves you through. At the threshold, Aveline murmurs that one should step into a market with the right foot first if one hopes to sell well. No one can quite agree whether this custom began with luck, scripture, or some merchant who once had a very successful right foot. Still, everyone steps carefully. You pass beneath the gatehouse into shadow. Above you, rainwater drips from the murder holes, now serving the gentler purpose of making travellers miserable. Your bundle shifts on your shoulder. The dog slips through behind you as if he is paid in confidence. Ahead, the market square opens beyond a narrow street, loud with bells, wheels, voices, and the bright small promises of trade. Aveline adjusts her cloak, straightens her basket, and walks toward the sound. The market square receives you the way a pond receives a thrown stone with ripples noise, and several creatures immediately disturbed. You step out from the narrow street into a broad, uneven space paved in some places with cobbles, in others with packed mud that has accepted defeat. The church rises on one side, its tower damp and grey, its bell rope hidden within like a sleeping serpent. Around the square, timbered houses lean forward over their lower stalls, as if the buildings themselves want to hear the bargaining. Aveline does not rush. She pauses at the edge, reading the square as carefully as she read the morning sky. There are butchers beneath striped awnings, fishwives with baskets of river catch, a baker arranging loaves behind a board, a woman selling pins, a potter setting out cups, a tinker calling over the clatter of his own pans, and 2 monks inspecting parchment near a scribe whose fingers are stained black to the nails. The smell is everything at once: wet wool, hot bread, fish scales, horse sweat, candle wax, frying onions, damp leather, and humanity gathered too closely beneath a low sky. Merwen shifts the egg basket against her hip. The eggs survive the gate, which already feels like a minor miracle. Evelyn finds a place near the church wall, not under the best shelter, but close enough that buyers passing from mass or errands may see her goods. The stall is no stall at all, only a cloth spread over a board borrowed from a woman who sells turnips and knows Evelyn from 3 markets ago. Favours in town are measured, remembered, and returned with interest. Though not always the kind a person wants. You help set out the wool, the onions, the herbs, the 2 small cheeses, and the eggs nested in straw. Evelyn arranges them not as a pile, but as a promise. The best-looking eggs sit on top. The wool is smoothed so it seems softer than the morning that produced it. The herbs are placed where their scent may do some persuading. Merwen wipes a smear of mud from one cheesecloth with her thumb and then hides the smear on the underside. This is not dishonesty, exactly. This is presentation, which is dishonesty with better posture. The church bell sounds above you, closer now, a bronze shiver falling through the square. People cross themselves, pause, continue arguing, or do all 3 in the same breath. A pilgrim with a broad hat and several badges on his cloak stops to examine the herbs. His badges show a shell, a little ampulla, a saint's head, and one shape so worn no one can quite agree whether it is a holy bird or a very disappointed fish. He asks whether the yarrow is good against fever. Evelyn says it may be. With prayer and warmth, the old habit of careful speech hangs in her answer. In a market, a woman can recommend, suggest, hint, and remember what her grandmother said, but promising too strongly invites blame when the fever chooses its own road. A plump townswoman picks up an egg and holds it toward the light. She turns it slowly, judging shell, weight, and perhaps the moral character of the hen. Merwen watches like a hawk in a linen coif. The woman says the shell is thin. Evelyn says it is the light that is thin. The woman says hens are lazy in wet weather. Evelyn says all creatures have been known to complain under rain. The price goes down, then up, then sideways, until both women seem equally wounded and therefore satisfied. Coins pass, eggs leave. Merwen exhales as if a siege has ended. Around you, women carry the market as surely as men carry sacks. They barter hens for thread, herbs for fish, old cloth for a knife handle repair, gossip for warning, warning for favour. A widow sells ale by the jug from beneath a patched awning, testing each cup with a look that suggests she has seen every trick in town and invented 2 of them. Near her, a young wife offers butter stamped with a little wooden mark. Some swear butter must be churned while singing, or it sulks in the cream. Others say if butter will not come, a hot iron laid near the churn drives away whatever spite has thickened the air. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the trouble lies with spirits, weather, or simply tired arms. You wander only as far as Evelyn's glance allows. A table of pilgrim tokens catches your eye: pewter shells, tiny crosses, little figures of saints, and badges from shrines you have never seen. The seller claims each one has touched a relic. The suspicious monk from the gate, or perhaps merely a monk with the same damp expression, stands nearby and sniffs as if he can smell false holiness through wet wool. No one can quite agree whether relic sellers are pious, clever, desperate, or all 3 before breakfast. A scribe sits under the church porch writing names on slips for those who cannot write them, his quill moving with thin, insect-like patience. A woman dictates a message to a son apprenticed in another town. She speaks slowly, choosing words as though each costs coin, which, in fact, it does. The scribe scratches, sands, blows, and folds. Ink marks his thumb, his cuff, and possibly his soul. Merwen watches him for a moment, then returns to the eggs. Writing is useful, but eggs sell faster. The rain eases, leaving drops trembling from awnings. Sunlight does not appear, but the clouds become less committed to gloom. Evelyn sends you to buy a small measure of salt, and you cross to a merchant whose scales hang from a beam. He weighs with little metal pieces, tapping them into balance, his face grave as a priest before an altar. A woman beside you mutters that merchants put their thumbs on the scale when saints look away. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether saints look away often, but everyone watches the merchant's hands. When you return, Aveline has traded one cheese for smoked fish wrapped in leaves. Its smell is strong enough to introduce itself to strangers. The dog appears beneath the board, staring upward with the profound spiritual hunger of a creature denied commerce. Merowen moves the fish higher. The dog sighs, perhaps reflecting on unfairness under feudal systems. By noon, the square thickens. A crier announces a lost cloak, a new toll on certain carts, and a warning about false measures. A group of boys chase one another near the church steps until an old woman lifts her cane, at which point they remember urgent business elsewhere. A baker argues that his loaves are lighter because flour is dear, not because his hands are dishonest. A fishwife laughs so loudly even the pigeons reconsider their choices. Aveline listens while selling. Prices tell her what the coming weeks may bring. Dear salt means harder preserving. Cheap onions mean someone's harvest was large or someone is desperate. Too many hens for sale may mean families cannot feed them through winter. News hides inside trade, and women read it quickly. Merowen hears that fever has touched the southern hamlets. Another woman says the river ford is rising. Someone else claims a lord's officer will visit the manor soon to review dues. And Aveline's fingers still for half a heartbeat before she resumes tying herbs. The church bell sounds again, softer beneath the market noise. You stand beside the half-empty cloth, feeling the day's cold rise through the soles of your boots. The square keeps breathing around you barter, bells, smoke, damp wool, saints, lies, laughter, and the tiny bright clink of coin. Aveline gathers what remains, tucks the salt safely beneath her cloak, and glances toward the road beyond town, where the work of selling will become the work of accounting for every coin, every rumour, and every duty waiting beyond the market wall. Aveline does not leave town the way she entered it. The bundles are lighter now, but her mind seems heavier, filled with the little arithmetic of coin, salt, smoked fish, toll, rumour, and obligation. The market square slowly loosens behind you, its clatter fading into lanes where puddles hold the grey shapes of overhanging houses. Merowen carries the empty egg basket as carefully as when it was full, because baskets themselves cost labour, and because habit does not always notice when danger has passed. You follow a side road out through the smaller gate, where the guard has found a heel of bread and is chewing with the grave determination of a man performing public service. The dog trots ahead, pauses, looks back, and then continues, as if leading the whole party by royal appointment. The rain has thinned to a mist that beads on cloaks and eyelashes. Beyond the walls, the track bends not toward the village at once, but toward the manor yard, where Aveline must stop before returning home. The manor sits on a slight rise above the fields, not a castle exactly, though it has enough stone, timber, and authority to make argument unwise. A ditch runs before it, full of brown water and reeds. The gate is open, and through it you see a yard churned by cartwheels, hooves, boots, and the long patience of mud. On one side stands a timber hall with a stone undercroft, its roof steep and dark from wet weather. On another side are barns, a granary raised on staddlestones to keep out rats. A dovecote round as a fat tower, and a bakehouse breathing warm smoke from its low chimney. Midday gathers there in a rough crowd. Tenant men stand near carts with sacks of grain. Women wait with hens in wicker crates, folded cloth, eggs owed as rent, or bundles of flax to be measured. A boy holds 2 geese under his arms, both of them furious and apparently involved in a legal appeal. Servants cross the yard carrying pails, straw, and baskets. Somewhere a smith strikes metal, not steadily, but now and then, each blow ringing like a thought no one wishes to finish. Aveline lowers her bundle and smooths her coif. Her face becomes calm, almost plain, the way a door becomes plain when barred from within. The reeve stands beneath the overhang of the hall, speaking with a clerk whose wax tablets hang from his belt. The clerk's stylus moves, scratches, pauses, and scratches again. Marks are made, duties are remembered, excuses are weighed like poor cheese. No one can quite agree whether the reeve is fair, clever, or merely fair when watched and clever when not. But everyone treats him as one treats a loaded cart on a narrow bridge. Aveline has brought no great rent today. This is not the heavy season of grain dues, thank mercy and the saints. Yet there are small obligations, which are often more troublesome because they creep in like damp. A length of spun wool promised from last month, 2 hens owed after a poor hatching season, a tally to confirm for shared oven fuel, news to hear about the coming Labour Days on the Lord's domain fields. The grand word is obligation. The village word is more work. Merowyn hands over the tied wool. The reeve takes it, pinches the twist, and nods to the clerk. The clerk marks the tablet. Aveline watches the mark as if she can force it to be honest by looking, nearby. Another woman argues over a hen that has stopped laying. She insists the bird laid well before the last moon. The reeve says rent does not follow the moods of hens. The woman says neither does hunger. The geese under the boy's arms choose this moment to shriek, perhaps in support of poultry rights. Near the barn door, an old custom is being observed with more seriousness than beauty. A tenant who owes capons has brought them tied in a basket, and each bird is handled, judged, and counted. Some swear a speckled hen brought to the manor yard foretells quarrels before Martinmas. Others say speckled hens foretell nothing except speckled eggs, and a keeper who talks too much. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the superstition survives because people believe it, or because manor yards are dull places unless someone makes trouble interesting. Aveline is called to the side table where the Lord Steward, a narrow man with clean hands and a fur-lined collar, hears matters too small for a royal court and too large for neighbours to settle without shouting. The manor court will sit properly later in the week, but whispers are already lining up ahead of it. A boundary stone has shifted near the lower meadow. A widow claims her late husband's brother is taking more hay than custom allows. Someone has been cutting green wood from the Lord's copse. A mill toll is disputed, as mill tolls have been since grain first met ambition. You stand close enough to hear, far enough to avoid being useful. Aveline confirms that she and 2 other women saw the boundary stone after Michaelmas, still half buried beside the thorn stump. Her words are careful. Women may not always be praised in public records, but in a village they remember paths, fences, births, debts, grudges, who borrowed a sieve, and where every stone stood before a man with a plough developed sudden uncertainty. The steward listens because memory, when shared by enough women, becomes difficult to push aside. The hall door opens, and warm smells drift out: ale, rushes, beeswax, damp dogs, roasted onions, and smoke trapped in old beams. Inside, servants are strewing fresh rushes over the floor before the afternoon meal, tossing aside the foulest of the old ones with wooden forks. A few sprigs of sweet herb are mixed in near the high end, where gentler noses will sit. Aveline glances in once, not with envy exactly, but with the practical eye of someone measuring how many hands are needed to keep such a place from drowning in its own grandeur. You see women there too, dairymaids with rolled sleeves, kitchen servants red-faced from heat, a laundress carrying linen, a girl polishing pewter with ash, and an older housekeeper wearing keys at her belt like a small iron kingdom. Their work is not softer because the walls are larger. It is only multiplied and watched. The steward finishes his questions. Aveline receives a nod, which is not thanks, but maybe the manor's nearest relation to it. Outside, a cart lurches across the yard and one wheel sinks deep, sending mud up the driver's leg. For a moment everyone looks toward it. You think of the cracked wheel leaning by Aveline's shed and feel a small, unwelcome prophecy roll through your mind. Before leaving, Aveline trades a few words with a tenant wife whose eyes are rimmed with weariness. They speak of hens, of the rising ford, of a child's cough in the southern hamlets, of whether the old leech woman from the next village still travels in wet weather. Aveline's face softens, but only slightly. Concern here must fit beside duty, and duty takes up space. The monastery bell drifts faintly across the fields, barely heard over hooves, geese, carts, and the steward's clerk scratching another mark into wax. Aveline gathers the smoked fish, the salt, the empty basket, and the remaining coins. Nothing has been lost. Nothing has been gained without cost. The manor yard, with its mud and measures and watchful doors, has taken its portion of the day. You step back toward the road, boots heavier than before. Behind you, the geese continue their case. Ahead, the village waits with fires to tend, animals to feed, and all the small troubles that escape the manor's notice because they belong entirely to women's hands. The road home from the manor does not take you straight back to Aveline's door. It bends first toward the lower cottages, where the ground dips near the stream and every roof seems to sag a little closer to the earth, as though listening for trouble. Aveline walks more quickly there, not with panic, but with the quiet speed of someone who has heard enough at the manor yard to know that one small fear has become a visit. The tenant wife from the yard, the one with tired eyes, hurries beside you, her cloak clutched at her throat. Her name is Elswith, and her youngest child has burned with fever since the night before. The old leech woman from the next village has not come, perhaps because of the rain, perhaps because the ford is rising, perhaps because old bones choose their own roads. No one can quite agree whether she knows more from herbs, from saints, or from having watched everyone suffer for 50 years. But when she's absent, other women do what they can. Elswith's cottage is smaller than Aveline's, lower roofed and darker, with smoke gathered thick beneath the rafters. The rushes near the door are damp and need changing. A clay lamp gives a weak yellow flame, though a half-burned candle stub waits nearby for later, saved as carefully as coin. The child lies on a straw pallet near the hearth, wrapped in wool, cheeks flushed, hair dark with sweat. Beside him sits his grandmother, turning a string of prayer beads through her fingers while murmuring to Saint Blais, who is called upon for throats, coughs, and all the narrow passages by which breath may become difficult. You remain near the door, suddenly aware of your own breathing. Medieval houses do not make illness private. Sickness sits in the same room as cooking, sleeping, mending, and milk pails. It leans against the hearth. It watches from the corner. It makes every ordinary object seem more fragile: the cup, the spoon, the blanket, the child's small wooden shoe. Aveline sets down her bundle and washes her hands with a little water poured over ash, scrubbing quickly, not from any learned theory of invisible creatures, but from habit, decency, and the old understanding that filth invites worse filth. She asks what the child has taken. Elswith shows her a cup of honey and vinegar steeped with thyme, a cloth dipped in cool water, and a charm tied beneath the pallet red thread, a scrap of blessed wax, and a tiny shaving from the church door. Taken secretly because some swear old holy wood carries protection. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such a shaving is devotion, theft, or both. But no one in the room looks eager to judge. Merowyn unwraps the packet of herbs from the market basket. Aveline chooses yarrow, thyme, and a few sage leaves, then asks for clean water and a pot not used for lye. Elswith brings one, apologising for its soot, though soot is the natural colour of nearly everything near a medieval fire. The herbs go in with water, and the little pot is set close to the heat, not boiling fiercely, only breathing steam. The smell rises sharp and green through the smoke. The grandmother says fever should be drawn out through the soles of the feet with onion slices wrapped in cloth. Another woman, arriving with rain on her shoulders, says a key warmed near the fire and pressed gently into a child's palm can frighten away certain chills. Someone else mentions leeches, though not with enthusiasm. Leeches are useful for some swellings, or so people say, but for a child already weak. Aveline shakes her head. Those who tell the tale never fully agree when bleeding helps, and when it merely makes the living look more like the dead. Aveline is careful not to promise. She tells Elswith to keep the child warm but not smothered, to offer small sips, to change the damp cloth, to keep the room from filling too thickly with smoke if the wind allows. She checks the child's hands, his breathing, the heat at his brow. Her face remains composed, but her eyes hold the old fear every household knows that a body can become a mystery too quickly, and that love is not always strong enough to command it. Outside, rainwater drips from the eaves in slow strings. The dog waits just beyond the threshold, as if even he understands his room is not for barging. From the stream side comes the soft cluck of hens settling under shelter. Elswith's older daughter moves quietly around the cottage, feeding the fire, fetching cloth, lifting a bowl, answering before being asked. She cannot be more than 12, yet her motions already carry the shape of woman's work, learned not from lessons but from watching worry repeat itself. On a peg near the bed hangs a small pouch filled with dried lavender, rosemary, and a blackened bit of bread saved from a holy feast. Some swear feast bread, kept dry and hidden, can protect a house from lightning, fever, and the worst moods of winter. No one can quite agree whether it should be eaten in danger, hung above the bed, or never touched again. The grandmother insists it must remain where it is. Aveline does not argue. Some remedies heal the body, some steady the hands, and some simply give fear a place to sit. The herb drink is strained through a linen cloth, the cleanest Elswith has. Aveline cools it with patient blowing and lets the child sip. He coughs, turns away, then takes another little mouthful. The room seems to hold itself still. Even the fire quiets to a red pulse. You feel how much of women's labour is guarding thresholds between hunger and food, cold and warmth, dirt and order, childhood and danger, life and whatever waits beyond the last breath. Aveline asks after Elswith herself then, and the woman looks startled, as if no one has asked that part of the matter. There is another child coming, perhaps before the next moon has fully changed. Her back aches, her feet swell. She has still been carrying water, feeding hens, kneading, washing, and walking to the manor when called. Birth is not treated as an interruption to labour. It is woven into it, feared, prepared for, joked about softly when courage allows. The midwife keeps a birthing stool, a sharp knife, clean linen if any can be spared, and a little oil blessed at Candlemas. Some women swear by prayers to St. Margaret, who escaped a dragon in legend and therefore is asked to help women through ordeals of the body. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the dragon is meant literally or whether every woman in the room understands the symbol too well. Merowyn promises to bring extra time later if the cough worsens. Aveline leaves a small pinch of salt, though you know what salt costs. Elswith tries to refuse. Aveline closes her hand around it and says only that the market was kind enough. This is not true, but it is the sort of untruth that keeps dignity warm. When you step back outside, the air feels cold and clean after the smoky room. The bell from the monastery sounds faintly through rain and mist, marking an hour that has passed whether anyone was ready for it or not. Aveline lifts her bundle again. The smoked fish, the salt, the empty egg basket, the herbs now lighter than before, all return to her arms, behind you. Elswith's door closes softly, and the little cottage keeps its watch beside the stream. You walk on through wet grass and rutted lane, carrying the smell of time, smoke, and fear with you. The day has not paused, it has only deepened. You return toward Aveline's cottage with time still clinging to your sleeves, and the memory of Elswith's smoky room following close behind. The rain has slowed to a mist so fine it seems less to fall than to hover, purling on the wool of your cloak and silvering the dog's whiskers. He trots ahead, glancing back now and then, as though checking that his flock of humans has not wandered into foolishness. The lane is livelier now than it was at dawn. Children have spilled from doorways like peas from a split sack. Though none seem entirely free from work, one carries kindling in both arms, walking with the serious wobble of a small bishop bearing relics. Another leads a goat by a rope, or perhaps the goat leads her. No one can quite agree, least of all the goat. Two boys kneel beside a puddle, floating chips of bark as boats and arguing over which is a merchant vessel and which is doomed by pirates, though both are mostly doomed by mud. Aveline pauses before her own fence, because the sound from behind it is not peaceful. It is the layered music of rural trouble hens shrieking, a child shouting, the goat bleating with theatrical injustice, and someone striking a wooden pan with a spoon. You step through the gate and find the yard in a state that would make a manor steward reach for a wax tablet and then surrender. The youngest child has opened the hen coop. Not fully, not disastrously, but enough for 3 hens to escape and 1 rooster to stand in the doorway deciding whether liberty is worth the weather. Merowyn is trying to herd the hens with her apron spread wide, while the old mother sits near the back step offering advice, most of it beginning too late to be useful. Aveline sets down the basket, takes in the scene, and moves without surprise. In this household, Calamity rarely introduces itself properly. It simply wanders out of the coop. You are given the task of blocking a gap in the fence. This seems simple until a hen approaches you with the wild eye of a creature who has never respected architecture. It darts left. You move left. It darts right. You move right. The dog, thrilled by the sudden promotion to farm official, runs in a circle and improves nothing. Merowyn finally catches the hen against the wattle fence and tucks it under one arm. Feathers puffed. Dignity ruined. The rooster watches from the coop door and decides, wisely, that revolution can wait. Some swear a black hen laid before sunrise can warn of storms, sickness, or a visitor with bad news. Aveline's mother says a hen that refuses to enter at dusk has seen something no Christian soul should follow. Even now, it is hard to tell whether hens are truly gifted with secret sight or simply enjoy making people kneel in muck. Aveline only checks their feet, their combs, and the straw in the nesting box, because omens are all very well, but mites are more reliable enemies. Inside the coop, eggs must be gathered before chill, rats, careless feet, or curious children find them. Merowyn shows you how to slip your hand beneath a brooding hen with confidence, not hesitation. Hesitation, she says, invites pecking. The hen proves this by pecking anyway. You draw out 2 warm eggs, smooth and astonishingly fragile after all the mud, iron, smoke, and hard wood of the day. Aveline takes them, holds each to the light, and sets one aside with a frown. It may be cracked. It may be used first. Nothing damaged is wasted. It simply moves closer to the present. Near the shed, the goat has managed to tangle her rope around a post, a bucket, and, impressively, herself. She stands with one hoof lifted, protesting as if she has been betrayed by foreign law. Aveline unties her with patient hands. The goat immediately attempts to reach the cabbage leaves stacked for later. You block her. She looks at you as if measuring how much of your cloak may be edible. The children must be counted again. Aveline does it without speaking, eyes moving from one small body to another. 1 child by the woodpile, 1 near the coop, 1 inside, probably asleep or committing quieter mischief. 1 older girl helping Merowyn. Counting children is not fear alone, it is rhythm, like checking embers or covering water. In a village bordered by ditches, animals, fires, tools, wells, carts, and forest. A child can find trouble faster than a monk finds ink stains. The child inside has not slept. He has found the softened bread meant for later and fed part of it to the dog through the doorway. The dog, who was outdoors a breath ago, has apparently used secret clerical passages known only to animals and saints. Aveline looks at the child, then at the dog, then at the diminished bread. The dog lowers his head in false repentance, chewing steadily. No one can quite agree whether dogs understand guilt, but this one clearly understands timing. Aveline does not scold loudly. She takes what bread remains, wraps it again, and gives the child a small task sorting kindling from damp sticks near the hearth. This is how children learn here, not through long speeches, but by being folded into usefulness. A little girl shakes, rushes free of crumbs. A boy carries onion skins to the dye basket. Merowyn teaches the older girl to twist thread evenly. The work is small, imperfect, and slower than if women did it alone. But children who never touch work become adults who stand in doorways asking where things are kept, which is a sorrow no village needs. In the yard, Geese from a neighbouring household have discovered the open gate and entered as if invited to inspect conditions. They march in a grey-white line, heads high, eyes bright with suspicion. The dog retreats behind you. This tells you all you need to know about geese. One pecks at the straw around the egg basket. Merowyn hisses at it. The goose hisses back with the confidence of a minor noble defending inherited rights. Aveline claps her hands and drives them out, but not before one leaves a wet insult near the threshold. Ash is fetched, sprinkled, and swept over the mess. Ash cleans, dries, scours, sweetens sour smells, and somehow appears in every answer a household gives to disorder. The old mother mutters that goose dung by the door means money may come, though she adds that money has shown a poor habit of losing its way. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether this saying began as optimism or revenge upon geese. The afternoon leans toward evening, though chores refuse to notice. The hens are shut, the goat is moved, the eggs are stored in a cool corner, the children receive crusts, tasks, corrections, and the occasional stroke of hair from a passing hand. Merowyn washes a scraped knee with warm water and a little thyme, then ties a linen strip around it. The injured child sniffs with great dignity, especially once promised the right to lick the pottage spoon later. Medieval courage, you begin to understand, is often negotiated through kitchen privileges. Aveline finally stands still beside the hearth, but only for a breath. Her gaze passes over the room fire. Water, bread, children, wool, herbs, dog, door, leaking cup, candle stub, and the basket now lighter from market and remedies. Every piece of the household has tugged at her since dawn. None is finished. Each merely settles for a moment, like a hen on straw, before the next disturbance. The monastery bell rolls through the wet afternoon, softened by mist. You warm your hands and listen as the cottage hums around you. Children murmuring, hens clucking beyond the wall, the goat chewing something she should not, the dog breathing under the bench with the innocent exhaustion of a creature who has caused half the trouble. Aveline reaches for the broom again. The floor has already been swept today, but the day, naturally, has taken that as a challenge. The broom has barely crossed the floor before the sky changes its mind again. Rain begins not as a polite tapping but as a sudden hard drumming on the thatch, on the shed roof, on the coop boards, on every bucket, fence rail, and hollow object in the yard. The cottage darkens at once. The little oiled linen window turns grey. The leak near the beam wakes with new enthusiasm, dropping water into its waiting cup so quickly that Merowyn gives it a look usually reserved for disobedient children. Aveline stands still, listening. Not to the rain alone, but to what the rain means. It means the goat must be checked before the ground floods near the post. It means the woodstack cover must be weighted. It means the road may soften, the stream may rise, the ford may sulk, and anyone still outside may be forced to seek shelter where shelter can be found. It means work is not stopped, only rearranged by weather with no concern for convenience. A knock comes at the door before anyone has quite decided what must happen first. Not a timid knock, but the flat, wet thud of someone using a fist because both hands are too cold for manners. Aveline lifts the bar, and wind pushes in with rain on its breath. Outside stand two women from the lane, a peddler with his pack covered in waxed cloth, the boy from the market with the eel pot now empty, and the suspicious monk from the gate, or perhaps, as before, merely a monk shaped by dampness into suspicion. Behind them the dog slips in as if he personally invited everyone. The lane beyond has become a ribbon of brown water. One of the women says the lower track is already running like a stream. Another says the gatehouse by the old palisade has dry space under its arch, and that more travellers have gathered there, waiting for the worst of the rain to pass. Aveline looks toward the hearth, toward the children, toward the roof leak, toward the bundles still needing sorting. Then she wraps her cloak tighter and tells Merowyn to mind the fire. You understand, with a small sinking feeling that you are going with her. The walk to the gatehouse is short, but rain makes every distance feel like penance. Your hood clings to your face, mud grips your boots, Water runs from the hedges and gathers in the ruts, hiding stones beneath a shining skin. The dog bounds ahead, thrilled by misery so long as it belongs to everyone. By the time you reach the old gatehouse at the village edge, your cloak is heavy, your sleeves are wet, and your boots have collected enough mud to claim tenancy. The gatehouse is not grand. It is a timbered arch with a small chamber above, built when the village first pushed its fence line toward the forest. Its oak posts are dark with weather, and the roof sags in a way that suggests long service and poor gratitude. Beneath the arch, several travellers huddle together a carter with a broken wheel, 2 village women carrying covered baskets, the damp monk, a charcoal burner smelling of smoke and wet leaves, and a shepherd boy with a lamb wrapped inside his cloak. Everyone shifts to make room, which is kind, though not spacious. Medieval hospitality often means sharing discomfort until it becomes communal property. The broken cart stands just beyond the shelter, one wheel tilted at a tragic angle in the mud. Avelin's eyes go to it at once, and you see her remember the cracked wheel by her own shed. The carter has unloaded 2 sacks to lighten the axle, and 1 sack has split, spilling oats into a puddle where they swell sadly. He says a stone caught the rim. The charcoal burner says the wheel was badly shod. One of the women says carts break when iron is worked under a waning moon. No one can quite agree whether the moon is to blame, the smith, the road, or the carter's habit of overloading everything except his sense. Rain pours from the gatehouse roof in steady curtains. The air smells of wet wool, horse leather, mud, damp straw, and the monk's travel cloak, which has clearly known better monasteries. The monk carries a small wooden box wrapped in cloth. He keeps it close beneath his arm, and everyone pretends not to look while looking constantly. The peddler, who has arrived behind you and now squeezes into the arch, whispers that it holds a relic of St. Cuthbert, or St. Dunstan, or possibly St. someone convenient. Some swear relics grow more powerful in rain, because heaven is nearer when the clouds stoop low. Even now, it is hard to tell whether this belief comes from devotion or from travellers trapped under roofs with nothing else to discuss. Avelin asks where the monk is bound. He says to the monastery hill, if the ford allows. His voice is soft, but dry in a way his clothes are not. The charcoal burner asks whether the relic cures toothache. The monk says it strengthens faith. The carter says faith is good, but a mended wheel would also be welcome. For a moment, even the monk smiles, though briefly, as if smiles are rationed during Lent. One of the village women uncovers her basket just enough to check the cloth inside. It holds linen strips meant for a household near the stream, where a birth may come before night or after, depending on the child's opinion of weather. Avelin nods, thinking of Ellsworth. Another basket carries onions and a little coarse bread for an old man whose daughter has been delayed at the manor. Rain slows feet, but hunger keeps its schedule. You stand beneath the arch, feeling water drip from the edge of your hood onto your chin. Outside, the road to the forest disappears behind rain. The palisade fence creaks softly in the wind. A rowan twig tied above the gate twists on its string. Red berries darken to black. Some say rowan at a threshold keeps ill-wishers from crossing. Others say it keeps foxes away, though foxes, like taxes, seem to find alternate entrances. Those who tell the tale never fully agree. But no one unties the branch. The carter begins repairing the wheel with help from the charcoal burner, who produces a wedge, a cord, and the resigned competence of a man who has fixed too many things in bad weather. Aveline lends a strip of old cloth from her pouch to bind a crack until the cart can limp to shelter. She does not say that her own household could use that strip. Such exchanges are common as breath-to-day cloth for a wheel. Tomorrow help lifting a beam, next month a borrowed sieve. Next winter a remembered kindness when stores run low. The rain continues, steady and cold. Work waits everywhere. At Aveline's cottage, the floor will be muddy again. The goat will need checking again. The pottage will need thinning. The children feeding. The leak emptied. The rushes turned. The wet cloaks hung. The fish stored safely from the dog's spiritual ambitions. Weather delays the body, not the list. The women know this. They speak of it not with drama, but with the calm irritation of people who have never expected the world to be efficient. At last the rain softens from curtain to thread. The road still shines, but the worst has passed. The monk tucks his mysterious box closer and steps out first, blessing the company with a damp hand. The carter tests the wheel, which holds with visible reluctance. Aveline watches it turn once, twice, then nods. You follow her back into the lane, boots sinking, cloak heavy, dog delighted, while behind you the gatehouse drips and settles, keeping its old watch between village, road, and forest. By the time you reach Aveline's cottage again, the afternoon has thinned into that uncertain hour when light remains in the sky but no longer seems useful. Mist lifts from the lane in pale strips, and the mud shines underfoot like dark oil. Your cloak hangs heavy from your shoulders. Your hem is freckled with road dirt, and your boots make the tired, sucking sound of a person being slowly claimed by the earth. The dog trots ahead with the pleased bounce of someone who has carried no bundles, fixed no wheels, paid no tolls, and yet believes himself essential to the success of the day. Merowyn opens the door before Aveline knocks. Warm smoke rolls out, thick and familiar, carrying the smell of pottage, damp wool, old rushes, and the faint sharpness of onions. The hearth is alive, though low. The cup beneath the roof leak is full almost to the brim, and another bowl has been placed beside it, ready for the next betrayal. The children are inside, mostly accounted for, though one has ash on his cheek and another is holding a stick with the air of someone recently forbidden from using it as a sword. Aveline does not remove her cloak at once. Evening has teeth, and they are already at the door. She sets down her bundle, checks the covered water, looks into the pot, glances at the children, the old mother, the hearth, the leek, the hanging herbs, and the suspiciously innocent dog. Then she steps back outside toward the byre, because animals do not wait for anyone's dampness to become comfortable. You follow her into the yard, where the mist lies low among the fences. The goat has been brought under shelter but has somehow wrapped her rope around a post again, less disastrously this time, as though practicing. The cow shifts in the byre, warm breath rising in the dimness. Aveline takes the milking stool and sets a wooden pail beneath her. The rhythm begins softly. Pull, stream, pause, pull, stream, pause. Milk strikes the pail in thin white lines, sounding gentle against the day's coarser noises. Some swear a cow must never be praised too warmly while milking, or envy may spoil her yield. Others say the first foam on fresh milk should be marked with a cross to keep witches from borrowing the cream by night. No one can quite agree whether witches truly concern themselves with dairy work, but Aveline's mother has always said that cream goes missing often enough to require explanation. Aveline makes the sign quickly over the pail, not dramatically, not fearfully, simply as one more motion among many. Merowyn brings a lantern to the byre door, its flame small behind horn panes, trembling whenever the wind slips past the boards. Beeswax would give a sweeter, steadier light, but this lantern burns tallow, smoky and stubborn. Its glow turns straw gold and leaves corners thick with shadow. You hold it while Aveline finishes, and the cow's flank rises and falls beside you, broad and warm as a wall. For a moment the world narrows to breath, milk, straw, and the soft scrape of a stool on packed earth. The hens must be shut properly this time. Merowyn counts them under her breath, touching each roosting shape with her eyes. The rooster mutters from the back of the coop, still undecided about whether freedom was worth the effort. A cracked egg from earlier is brought inside to be used before morning. The sound one is placed carefully in a cool basket. The goat receives cabbage leaves and immediately behaves as if no one has ever fed her in all the history of goats. Back indoors, the evening chores gather quickly, like people crowding beneath a market awning. Wet cloaks are hung near the hearth, but not too close, because sparks are small devils with excellent aim. Shoes are scraped. The children's hands are wiped. The pottage is stirred and thinned with a little water stretched to welcome everyone back. The smoked fish from market is unwrapped, and Aveline cuts a small portion to flavour the pot, then salts and wraps the rest carefully in linen before setting it high on a shelf, beyond the reach of children, cats, and dogs with pilgrim souls. Salt is counted again. Aveline tips the little measure into a small-lidded pot and closes it as if sealing a treasury. Beside it she stores the herbs left after Elsweith's visit, the onion skins for dye, the remaining coins wrapped in cloth, and the tablet-woven band that tied the wool. The household stores are not grand enough for a winter storehouse of a castle, with barrels of ale, sacks of grain, smoked hams, wax, candles, and dried peas stacked beneath guard. Yet this cottage has its own small fortress, a shelf, a chest, a hanging hook, a hidden jar, a memory of what remains and how long it must last. Aveline opens the wooden chest near the wall with her iron key. The hinge complains softly. Inside lie folded linen, spare wool, a little pouch of coin, 2 better veils, a packet of blessed candle wax, and a narrow strip of cloth saved from her wedding gown. Some say a bride's cloth kept in a chest protects the household from quarrels if never cut. Others say it only protects women from forgetting that they once owned something clean, even now. It is hard to tell whether the old belief comforts the marriage, the memory, or the chest itself. Merowan turns the rushes near the hearth with a wooden rake. The worst damp clumps are carried out, and fresher handfuls from a dry bundle are scattered thinly. Aveline's mother crushes a little dried lavender and meadowsweet between her palms and lets it fall among the rushes, though there is not enough to sweeten the whole room. The scent rises briefly, delicate and almost noble, before smoke and wool reclaim their kingdom. You help sweep mud toward the threshold, and the dog steps into the neat pile with perfect timing. Merowan does not sigh this time. She simply points. The dog retreats under the bench, where he begins considering forgiveness. The door is barred before full dark. Aveline checks it twice, lifting the iron latch, pressing the oak plank, testing the bar as if the night itself might lean against it. Outside, mist thickens in the lane. Somewhere a cart creaks past, perhaps the repaired one from the gatehouse, moving slowly through ruts toward shelter. Farther off, the monastery bell sounds for evening prayer, its note softened by weather, fields, and distance. The bell that marked dawn now gathers the day back into itself. Bowls are filled. The pottage has become richer with smoked fish, sharper with onion, and darker from long simmering. You sit near the hearth, hands wrapped around the wood, and feel heat seep into your palms. The old mother receives her portion. The children eat with sleepy seriousness. Merowan eats while checking a sleeve she still means to mend. Aveline sits last, as she often does, and even while she lifts the spoon, her eyes continue their quiet count milk covered, hens shut, goat tied. Fish salted, water guarded, fire banked, stores remembered, door barred. The lantern flame trembles beside the half-burned candle stub saved from morning. Rain no longer drums, but drops still fall from the eaves in slow, separate notes. The cottage is not peaceful because the work is finished. It is peaceful because, for this narrow hour, the work has been gathered into order. You listen to the soft scrape of spoons, the mutter of the fire, the breathing of tired children, and the wind stroking the thatch. Outside, the medieval night waits with cold hands. Inside, Aveline folds one more cloth, closes one more lid, and gives the fading day no loose thread to pull. When the bowls are emptied and the last streaks of pottage are chased from wood with crusts of coarse bread, Aveline does not sink into sleep, though the firelight makes every face in the cottage look ready for it. Instead, she covers the pot, wipes the knife, checks the door bar once more, and speaks quietly to Merowan. The old mother watches from beneath her thinning fur-lined cloak and gives a small nod, as if some old household permission has passed between them without needing words. You are taken back into the evening, though not far. The village lane is dim beneath mist, with puddles catching the weak glow from shutter cracks and lantern slits. The cold has returned now that the rain has wandered off, and it settles in the folds of your cloak, finding all the places warmth had carefully repaired. Aveline carries a small jug beneath one arm and a cloth bundle beneath the other. Merowyn walks beside her with the look of someone tired enough to dream standing up, yet still alert to mud, gossip and geese. The alehouse stands near the bend in the lane, not marked by a painted sign so much as by the smell of malt, smoke, wet wool, and people choosing not to go home yet. A bundle of twigs hangs outside to show that ale is for sale, though no one can quite agree whether the twig sign began as honest notice, ancient custom, or simply because someone once had too many twigs and a good brew. The door opens low, and you duck beneath the lintel into a room warmer, louder, and smokier than Aveline's cottage, which is a competitive achievement. Inside, the hearth glows broad and red. Benches line the walls, rushes cover the floor, already darkened by boots and spilled drink. A long board rests on trestles near the fire, and behind it stands the alewife, a square-shouldered widow named Gunora, who wears her keys at her belt and her patience in very small portions. A copper kettle sits near the coals. A mash tub stands in the back room, half hidden behind hanging cloths, and the air carries the sweet, damp smell of grain becoming something more forgiving than water. Brewing is women's work here as often as bread is, though men speak of ale as if they personally invented thirst. Gunnar knows the heat of the mash by touch, the mood of yeast by smell, the strength of malt by colour, and the honesty of customers by the way they set down coin. Some swear ale must never be brewed under a quarrelsome moon, or the drink turns sharp and sets neighbours against one another. Others say neighbours need no help from the moon, even now. It is hard to tell whether sour ale causes arguments, or merely gives them a bench by the fire. Aveline greets Gunora with the small familiarity of women who have traded more than drink. The cloth bundle opens to reveal onion skins, a little thread, and one of the eggs gathered after the market, the sound one, not the cracked one. In return, Gunora fills the jug with small ale and sets aside a heel of barley bread dark as wet earth. No clerk writes the bargain, no wax tablet records it, yet both women remember exactly what passes between them, and memory here has sharper teeth than ink. You sit near the hearth, where your damp hem begins to steam. Around you, the village's evening talk moves in low waves. A charcoal burner tells the carter's broken wheel story, as if he alone saved civilization from sinking into mud. A woman near the wall corrects 3 details without looking up from her mending. Someone has heard that the suspicious monk reached the monastery before full dark, still clutching his relic box. Someone else swears the relic is genuine because the rain eased after he blessed the gatehouse. Gunora says the rain eased because clouds empty when finished, which may be the most dangerous kind of heresy practical sense. Merowyn sits with 2 girls near the rushes, twisting a cord from wool scraps while listening to older women. They pretend not to listen, which fools no one. This is how much of village knowledge travels not as lesson, not as sermon, but as talk beside smoke. Who is ill? Who owes whom? Which field floods first? Which merchant uses false weights? Which child should not be sent alone to the mill? Which widow needs wood brought before the frost hardens? Which man speaks kindly in church and cruelly at home? The alehouse keeps these truths warm, even when no one names them grandly. Aveline drinks only a little, then cups the jug with both hands. Her face softens in the firelight. For the first time all day, she seems not idle, exactly, but allowed to sit where the next task cannot immediately reach her. Even here, work remains close. A woman beside her darns a stocking. Another plucks feathers from a dead hen into a basket. Gunora scrubs a cup with ash and hot water, then holds it to the light with the severity of a bishop examining doctrine. The difference is not that labour stops, it is that labour speaks. A song begins near the far bench, low and old, not the polished kind sung in noble halls by minstrels with clean sleeves, but a turning little tune about a miller's daughter, a lost shoe, and a rooster who knows too much. The words change depending on who sings them. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the daughter tricks the miller, marries the reeve, or steals the rooster and becomes rich selling eggs. Tonight, she appears to do all three, which seems ambitious but not impossible. Laughter moves softly through the room, not loud, not careless, but tired laughter, the sort that has carried water, bargained at market, watched fevers, chased hens, and still found room to notice that life is absurd. Gunora tells the charcoal burner that if he had bound the cartwheel any tighter, the cart would have confessed its sins. Aveline says nothing, but her smile appears behind the jug, the dog, having somehow been admitted despite no known moral qualifications, lies beneath the bench and thumps his tail whenever bread is mentioned. Near the hearth, the alewife marks a tally on a stick, cutting a notch for a man who will pay after the next wood sale. Tally sticks are dangerous little things, honest until held by dishonest hands. Some swear splitting the stick between lender and borrower keeps both souls from cheating. Others say it only gives each soul half a weapon for later argument. No one can quite agree, but Gunora's notches are clean, and few in the village care to test her arithmetic. Aveline hears news of Elswith's child before leaving. The fever has not risen higher, and the boy has taken more herb drink. This news passes from one woman to another, with the care of carrying a candle through wind. It is not victory, not yet, but it is enough to loosen shoulders around the hearth. Merowyn tucks that relief away with the other thing she learns by watching. At last, Aveline stands. The jug is filled, the bargain settled, the talk gathered. Outside, the cold lane waits again, quiet except for dripping eaves and the distant bark of a dog that is not the one following you, because this one is already at your heel. As you step from the alehouse, the warmth of smoke and song lingers in your clothes. Behind you, women's voices continue near the hearth, weaving news, warning, memory, and humour into something stronger than any one household. The monastery bell sounds faintly through the dark, and Aveline turns toward home with the ale under her cloak, carrying back not just drink, but the village itself in fragments. The walk back from the alehouse is short, yet the night makes it feel like a passage between worlds. Behind you, the last warm voices fold into the smoky room. Before you, the lane lies dim and silvered with wet mud, the puddles holding small broken pieces of lantern light. Aveline keeps the jug tucked beneath her cloak, one hand over it as if carrying a sleeping child. Merowyn walks close, her shoulders rounded against the cold. The dog pads ahead, then behind, then ahead again, deeply committed to guarding everyone from shadows he has personally invented. At Aveline's door, the iron key comes out again, dark against her palm. The key is large enough to seem important, though it opens only one oak door, one chest, and perhaps a woman's brief sense that something in the world is where it ought to be. She lifts the latch, pushes inside, and the cottage receives you with heat that has sunk low into embers, smoke resting in the rafters, and the sleepy animal smell of people gathered too long in wool. The old mother has not gone to bed. She sits near the hearth, turning the half-burned candle stub between her fingers, judging whether it is worth lighting for a little more mending. Beeswax would have burned sweet and clean, but this is tallow, smoky and soft at the edges, saved from earlier work. Some swear a candle that gutters blue means a spirit passes near, while one that burns with a long straight flame means an honest guest sleeps under the roof. No one can quite agree what it means when a candle merely smells bad and drips on your hand, though most households call that ordinary life. Aveline sets down the ale jug, checks the hearth, and begins preparing the house for night as if closing a small fortress. The door is barred again, not once but twice. The shutter over the oiled linen window is pressed tight. The water bucket is covered. The salt pot is closed. The chest is locked, and the key returns to her girdle, where it hangs with a soft iron knock against her hip. Keys, in a house like this, are not ornaments. They are little promises that flour, linen, coin, and memory may last until morning. The children are arranged for sleep in layers of wool and straw. One has already collapsed near the wall, mouth open, hair stuck to his cheek. Another protests that he is not tired, then yawns so widely he nearly proves otherwise. Merowyn shakes out a blanket patched in 4 corners and spreads it across 2 smaller bodies. Avalyn tucks the edges around them, firm but gentle. In wealthier halls, you have heard, beds rise from the floor, hung with curtains to hold warmth and privacy. Here, privacy is a rumour, and warmth is negotiated by elbows, siblings, and the occasional sleeping dog who inserts himself where least invited. The dog chooses the place under the bench, then changes his mind and lies nearer the door, perhaps remembering his official duties. Outside, another dog barks from the far end of the lane, then a second answers near the byre, then silence. In that silence, every person in the room listens without seeming to. A fox, a stranger, a loose cow, a drunk neighbour, a spirit with poor manners. Night gives all sounds extra clothing. Avalyn waits, head tilted, when no alarm follows. She turns back to the hearth. The fire must be banked, not abandoned. She draws ash around the embers, covering them carefully so they will keep their heat until morning. A dead hearth at dawn means cold fingers, delayed bread, wasted kindling, and a bad beginning. Some say if the last coal dies before midnight, quarrels enter the house before sunrise. Others say quarrels enter by human invitation and need no help from ashes. Even now, it is hard to tell which belief is kinder. Avalyn banks the coals anyway. Because superstition and practicality often share the same stool. Merowyn takes up the mending she carried in her lap earlier, but only for a few stitches. The candle is lit at last, its little flame bending whenever the draught slips under the door. Its light touches her face, the needle, the torn sleeve, the wool thread drawn through cloth. The room has narrowed. Daylight work belongs to yards, roads, markets, wells, gardens, and manor courts. But night work gathers close to the hand, stitch by stitch. She holds tomorrow together. You sit near the wall with your blanket around your shoulders and feel the draught move along the floor. It slides under doors, through thatch, between boards, around your ankles, and into every heroic thought you may have had about medieval endurance. The rushes beneath you are cleaner than before, sweetened faintly with crushed lavender, though the stronger smells of smoke, damp wool, dog, and old wood remain loyal. Above, soot-black rafters vanish into shadow. From one beam hangs the little feather charm you noticed at dawn, turning slightly in the breath of the room. Avalyn's mother sees you looking and murmurs that night air is not to be trusted too deeply. Bad air, wandering breath, cold vapours from marsh and graveyard. All of them are blamed for sickness when no better culprit can be found. She keeps a sprig of rosemary and a bit of blessed wax near the children's heads, just in case. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether such things keep danger away or simply let old hands do something when worry will not sleep. The monastery bell sounds far off, thinner now, softened by mist and distance. It marks prayer in the dark, but here it also marks the shrinking of the household into rest. Avalyn kneels briefly near the hearth. Her prayer is quiet. You hear only fragments thanks for bread, for fire, for the child by the stream, for animals kept, for roads survived, for tomorrow's mercy. Merowyn bows her head. The old mother's fingers move along her beads. The dog sighs, which may not be devotion. But it does not disturb the mood. Avalyn rises and checks the latch once more. She touches the hanging herbs, moves one cloak farther from the embers, sets the milk where it will stay cool, and places the cracked egg near the bowl for morning use. Nothing is left entirely to chance. Night may be dark, but it is not allowed to be disorderly. One by one, sounds loosen and fade. The children's breathing deepens. Merowyn's needle stops. The candle burns lower, a small trembling star beside the hearth, outside, Mud settles in the lane. The hens sleep with their heads tucked beneath wings. The goat shifts once in the byre, dreaming perhaps of forbidden cabbage. Far away, the repaired cart creaks faintly over the road, then disappears into silence. You lie down beneath the wool blanket, feeling straw press through the ticking and cold stone memory, rising from the earth below. The day has not ended in triumph, only in survival, which in this village is triumph wearing plain shoes. Aveline settles last. Her key rests near her hand. Her face is turned toward the covered embers. Even in rest, she seems to be listening to roof, door, breath, animals, weather, and the long hidden list waiting beyond sleep. The candle gutters once, steadies, and the draughty hall of the little cottage drifts toward uneasy peace. The candle does not go out all at once. It lowers itself by degrees, shrinking into a small amber tongue that trembles whenever the draught finds the door. You lie beneath the wool blanket and listen to the cottage becoming night. The day's noises have not vanished. They have only softened and moved farther away, like carts disappearing along a wet road. A child sighs in sleep. The old mother's beads click once, then stop. Somewhere beneath the bench, the dog turns in a dream. Paws twitching as if still chasing hens with more enthusiasm than skill. Aveline remains awake longer than anyone else. You know this by the faint movement of her shadow near the hearth. She rises quietly, though the floor creaks beneath her foot, and crosses to the door. Her hand tests the bar again. Then she touches the hanging key at her girdle. The little iron promise that the chest is closed, the salt guarded, the coins hidden, the linen folded away from damp. The gesture is so small you almost miss it, but it carries the whole day inside it. Near the hearth, the banked embers glow through ash like red eyes under snow. Aveline crouches and listens to them, as if fire has a voice of its own. Some swear that if an ember cracks loudly after midnight, a traveller thinks of the house, or a message crosses the dark. Others say it only means the wood was damp, which, in this village, is less a theory than a lifestyle. No one can quite agree whether the fire speaks, but Aveline still keeps it covered with care. A living coal at dawn is the first kindness of morning. She moves to the table and turns over the small knife, setting it blade inward. Her mother has always said no blade should point toward a sleeper, lest sharp dreams enter the room. Merowyn once laughed at this, you imagine. But she sets knives inward too. A charm does not need full belief to become habit. It only needs to have belonged to someone who loved you. The cracked egg rests in a bowl for morning. The milk is covered. The smoked fish is high on the shelf, wrapped safe from paws and small fingers. The herbs gathered from the garden hang in shadow, sage and thyme drying beside darker bundles whose names you only half remember. The wool spindle lies near the stool, still now, but ready to turn again when the next grey light returns. Every tool has been tucked into place, broom against wall, bucket near hearth, needle in bone case. Spoon beside bowl, lantern snuffed and cooling. The house is not rich, yet it is ordered with the care of a chapel before service. Outside, the animals settle into their own dark kingdom. The cow breathes in the byre, broad and slow. The goat shifts in straw and gives one soft, complaining murmur, perhaps still dreaming of cabbages denied to her by unjust law. The hens are closed behind their little door. No one can quite agree whether hens dream, but if they do, you suspect their dreams contain grain, sunshine, and elaborate escapes from Merowyn's apron. Aveline kneels once more near the hearth, not for a long prayer, not for a performance, but because the body remembers gratitude better when lowered close to the ground. She whispers names, the child by the stream, Elswith and the child still waiting in her, the old mother, Merowyn, the little one sleeping under patched wool, the husband breathing near the wall, the animals, the fields, the road, the cartwheel that must be mended before another market day, the suspicious monk with his relic box, the women at the alehouse, the market tolls, which perhaps even saints find irritating. The monastery bell sounds far across the fields. It is faint now, hardly more than a bronze thread pulled through mist, It has marked the day from first cold waking to this final dim hour, and you feel how time here does not rush forward in bright numbers. It moves by hunger, smoke, bells, weather, and work. Dawn water, morning bread, garden frost, wool twist, pottage steam, market mud, manna dews, fever herbs, hens at dusk, alehouse talk, door bar, ember, breath. Aveline lies down at last. The key rests near her hand, close enough to find in darkness. Merowyn has already drifted into sleep, one hand curled as if still holding thread. The old mother's face is softened by shadow beneath her worn cloak. The candle gives one last thin flare, then gutters low, leaving the fire to hold the room in red half-light. And now the world grows gentler. The cold stone is still beneath the house, but you no longer feel it as an enemy. It is only the old earth holding everything steady. The rushes lie quiet on the floor. The smoke rests high in the rafters. The wet wool smell fades into warmth. Outside, the lane is empty, the puddles still, the wattle fences dark lines beneath the mist. No cart groans, no market bell calls, no toll clerk waits with his wax tablet. The long day has folded its hands. You breathe slowly, and the cottage breathes with you. In the byre, the cow exhales. Under the bench, the dog sighs with the deep satisfaction of a creature who has survived much work by watching others do it. The embers pulse once, then again, soft as a heart under ash. Nothing more is asked of you now. No bucket waits in your hand. No road pulls at your boots. No cold well rope bites your palm. You have walked beside Aveline through the hidden labour of one full day. And at last even labour has lowered its voice. The medieval night gathers close, not frightening now, only dark, deep, and full of sleeping things. The saints in their roadside shrines are quiet. The monastery windows glow faintly on the hill, then seem to blur into mist. The herbs above the hearth hang still. The iron key cools beside Aveline's hand. The last ember keeps a little red secret for morning. Let the village fade now, let the market square empty, the manor yard sink into silence, the alehouse fire settle, the forest road disappear beneath frost and cloud. You are warm enough, you are sheltered enough. The door is barred, the animals are safe, the bread is wrapped, the water is covered, and the night has nothing more it needs to take from you. Rest here, in the hush after work, where smoke softens the rafters and sleep comes quietly over the straw. The last light dims, the last bell fades. The old world closes around you like a wool blanket, rough, warm, and kind enough for tonight.